Today is October 14th, 2025, and I'm going to do a little video on an idea for helping to end homelessness. And I get a lot of emails from the FM Coalition to End Homelessness about meetings coming up and stuff like that. And it struck me as I also get a ton of emails from liveauctioneers.com, and I've been buying a lot of antiques and stuff on Live Auctioneers. And they always have a buyer's premium, is what they call it. When you buy stuff, they have anywhere from 14 to 35%, and most of the time it's about 25% buyer's premium on top of what you pay for something. And I was thinking, what about if we had a 1%, I like to call it humanity fee, on purchases over $1,000, so that we could raise a lot of money to help the homeless get a home. And it would be such a small amount that I would think most people would be embarrassed to be against it, because you're trying to help your fellow man have a place to live. And it's crazy what people are paying for some of these things that no one really needs, and I don't know why anyone would object to, adding another measly 1% to pay for stuff. Like, here is Indiana Jones hat that sold for $500,000, and on top of that, the buyer would pay 31%. Well, why not have the buyer pay 32% and have that 1% go in a pool with another millions of other purchases for over $1,000? It would add up real quick, I would think, and it'd be fairly painless, and the people paying it would probably people that would hardly notice the price difference. Here's some other things that I printed out that are pretty amazing. Here's the box of chocolates from Forrest Gump that sold for $30,000. This just is pretty recent. This is a skateboard from Tony Hawk that sold for $900,000. That's not including the 31% buyer's premium someone paid. Here's a camera that sold for $62,000, and what I find amazing is their estimate was $8,000 to $12,000, so they knew it was good, but obviously two people with really deep pockets just kept bidding and bidding until they got it. Here's another one that's not too long ago. This is the Lone Ranger's white cowboy hat. They were estimating $8,000 to $16,000, and it sold for $240,000. And there's examples like this over and over and over again, all through purchases on eBay and Live Auctioneers, and all over the world, people buying expensive, watches and handbags and shoes and clothes and stuff like that, and bottles of wine. There's all sorts of stuff that goes for a lot of money. Here's a purse that sold for $230,000, and here's a watch that sold for $255,000. Here's the door from Cheers that sold, the TV show that sold for $150,000. But you can see with purchases over $1,000, I don't know why we couldn't put that in a pool and start, with also working on affordable houses. Like, here's a few things I printed out with some small houses that are real inexpensive, compared to the average cost today. And one of the most promising that's been used a lot, these are called pallet homes, and they have these all over that help people have a place to stay better than a tarp, or a tent under a bridge. And these are real inexpensive, and they take a couple people just hours to set up. And here's a whole village of them that people have a locked door and have their own house. And they usually have like a community shower bathroom area, but I don't know why they couldn't put in something like this. These are, campers use these. There's like a 5-gallon tank that has a toilet and a place to, wash your hands. And then there's also, portable showers, and there's other things that could make live, easier to live. Here's a hot water heater if you wanted a hot shower. And, I go walking downtown Fargo all the time, and I see people, between a rock and a hard place. Most are very soft-spoken, kind of asking if I have a couple bucks for a sandwich or something. And it's just heartbreaking to think that, there's people out there living on the street. In fact, I ran into it so often I made this thing. This I call your good luck charm, and it's in a little baggie here. And I have in here, well, let me pause this and I'll open it up. Okay. When you open it up, the first thing you see is a mirror, and the idea there is no one can really help them if they don't want to help themselves. So I've kind of, inspirational things on different things I think that a person needs to kind of find a path out of the terrible spot they're in. But I also have places to call, like here's 211 or 235-SEEK. And then on this part here I have Labor Ready, Downtown Engagement Center, Salvation Army, New Life Center, Homeless Shelter, and Gladys Ray Shelter, Alcoholics Anonymous, and Narcotics Anonymous, and Lighthouse Recovery. And then, but all this stuff has my opinion on things that people could do to help themselves. And there's also something fairly new that there's a downtown help for the homeless that I just found out about fairly recently, so I included that in there. And the way that I understood this to work is that you call this number and people will actually come out and talk to the person in need and see if they can help them meet those needs. Everything from helping them try and find a house to, detox, to all sorts of stuff. In fact, this last weekend I went to a lot of businesses downtown and asked them for their opinions about, what to do with the people hanging out on the benches and stuff that are, not doing anything helpful for the businesses trying to attract customers, and you've got people hanging out, a lot of them pretty drunk and asking people for money walking by. And so I think this is a great idea if they actually have people that will stop and help the people on the street. So that's a new thing. One of the people I talked to, she had that taped to her cash register, and another person I talked to said they had that phone number on speed dial. And I thought, that's a great idea. But all of this takes money, and even just my little spot here, when I look around at a lot of the things in here, I think about, just 1% of what was spent on a lot of this would have helped a lot of people. And the 1% would be a fairly painless thing to come up with. And so I'm going to put this out here and see what happens, and hopefully we can get some help for people. And a couple things to keep in mind. It's a fine line between helping and enabling. You don't want to make it so that people don't want to get better and get a job because they don't need to, because everything's provided for them. And I wouldn't like to see people that are hardworking live a better life than people that aren't working. And there's a lot of people that are just on the edge of being homeless, you know, where they were sick and they couldn't work for a while and they're behind on their rent or mortgage, and that they could use some help before they are homeless. And then there's people that are just very temporarily homeless that could use, you know, a month or two or three before they could gather enough money for first and last rent and stuff. And then there's those that seem to be chronically homeless for year after year after year. But I think all of them, no matter why they're homeless or not, should have a life well enough to at least have a place to take a shower, to have an address. When you go apply for a job, you need to have an address that people could find you at, and have some kind of a halfway convenient, or I don't know how to quite word it. You know, you want people to live a comfortable life if they, you know, can. And I don't know why the rest of us that are so lucky couldn't afford a measly 1% when we buy something that costs over $1,000 to help pay for the people that kind of are between a rock and a hard place sometimes. So we'll see what happens, and I'll shut this off now.